Hello once again, I'm Craig Andrus. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Call the Mayor Wichita, your chance to ask any question you'd like. And boy, we've got a lot of things to talk about this week. Mayor, appreciate you being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. There is a lot to cover. Of course, we're getting into our budget season, and so we've had our first look at our budget, and it looks pretty good. In fact, we're going to have some things coming up on some of our council agendas very soon, talking about expanding our aquatics programs and our libraries and some other programs that we want to expand, putting more money in streets. And right now we've got to decide based on community input how we spend a surplus budget this year. So we've had 2 years in a row now with surplus budgets.
Okay, before we get to the calls, and feel free to call. This is the Call the Mayor Show, your chance to get to ask a question. 316-491-5787 is the number. Call us. You can get a hold of us on Facebook. I know some of you do, reaching out. Who decides how we're going to spend the surplus?
So the council does. So it's all a council decision.
It is a council decision, and
so
you
we
will vote on this?
We'll vote on that. We will hear from the community and listen to their recommendations and the programs that they would like to see expanded. But so last year we ended up with $2.5 million more than we anticipated, and we took that entire $2.5 million and we put it into savings. So we now have 15% of our general fund budget in savings. Now the bond rating agencies say that we need to have at least 10%.
10%.
We have 15%. We're at $35 million in savings, which gives us a really nice cushion. This year, we're looking at the preliminary estimates as having a $1 million budget surplus. So the community is going to get to have some input on where they'd like to see us spend the surplus, and we're not cutting any programming. We're going to expand libraries. We're going to expand our aquatics program. We're going to put pools and splash pads all over the city. It's a great position to be in.
Now, one of those things, and again, call the mayor, 316-491-5787 is the number. Jim, if you could check in. I'm not sure if I'm hearing if we have any calls yet. But as soon as we have a call, we'll get to you, 316-491-5787. I did want to ask about where we go next with this, because I can already tell people asking, fill my potholes, fill my potholes.
So we do need to put more money into that, and we've got to focus on street repair, but at the same time we have to balance that. I mean, part of the complaints we get is, why do we have so many streets under repair at the same time?
Yes. And
so navigating Wichita is a challenge when we do that, and so it's challenging. We have some major streets like 2nd Street that's under full renovation right now. We've just finished some nice projects like Pawnee in South Wichita between Grove and Hydraulic, and fixed some drainage issues. And we can talk a little bit about drainage issues because we've done some major projects that have alleviated some of the neighborhood flooding over the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
Mayor, we've had so much flooding this year. I did call earlier today. I'll spring this on you. I called earlier today and I asked, will Seneca and McLean be open for River Festival? As people watch the show, we'll be doing River Fest coming up here. It starts on, Friday after we talk here. And I asked, when is that going to be done? Because that was part of blocked off. I know the river run goes through there, a big part of Wichita. So I called and I asked the city, I said, can you get me an answer? Because I asked the Wichita Police Department too. I said, are we going to have Seneca and McLean open? And they said, well, we were promised it would be open by noon Friday, the start of River Fest. And when I called this afternoon, got a hold of the Joe Pager with Public Works, and he said, well, go on out, we'll talk to you. And they were opening it up as we talked to them, so that was good to see. They opened it up a day ahead.
And that's through a horrific spring season when we were having rain every day. It's been a little challenging to get these projects finished up, so it's a little hard to pour concrete, fill in channels when you have major rain events happening.
Absolutely it is. It's fun to see some of the stuff on Facebook and some of the other things that I know the city has sent out too. Seeing people in kayaks kind of working on the new baseball stadium.
That was
literally getting some work done in a kayak. If you have questions about the rain or anything else, or how the city's doing with rain and funding, I know there have been some issues with water. 316-491-5787 is the number. You can ask whatever you want. And we'd be happy to talk about Riverfest as well, because we know that's coming up. You're going to be in Riverfest.
Absolutely. That's a big event. Are you going to be
in the parade Friday?
So Friday night, myself and the entire council will be in the parade, and then Sunday, I'm the reigning egg toss champion, so I'm defending my crown as the celebrity egg toss gets underway at noon on Sunday.
I'm Is there an egg pun in here? Are you egg-cited? I had to ask.
Well,
I had to ask.
you know, it's an event that can get a little scrambled sometimes, but looking forward to.
I'm going to cut the puns right there. It should be a good time. All right, we do have our first caller. Thank you for that. 316-491-5787. Dave, you have a question. Go ahead. You are on the show with Call the Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. A couple months ago, you discussed the fact that the city was trying to rename the floodway in honor of M.S. Mitchell, and I was wondering what the status is of that, because I know that there's a sign already erected down on South Broadway going across the floodway. It looks like a state transportation sign.
So great question, and probably not the place I wanted to break the news, because I'm not sure it's my news fully to break, but we are going to rename the big ditch the Mitch Mitchell floodway, and that had to go through Congress. We have approval from Congress because it is run by the Corps of Engineers that has the rights to that floodway, and we had to get permission from the United States Congress to make that happen, and it needs to happen. But there's some other things that are happening that we want to rename in honor of Mitch Mitchell, and we're going to probably see that very soon to go along with the floodway that's going to be renamed.
Can I still call it the Big Ditch, and can I still call him Big
So
Ditch
people
Mike? Is that okay?
Big Ditch Mitch.
Or Mitch. I said Mike. I'm sorry.
Big Ditch
Yes.
Mitch. You know, he obviously took a lot of heat as he was building that.
Yes.
The stories that we've heard, he was shot at as he was trying to move equipment into that ditch area, and there were a lot of angry people. But people today really appreciate what he was able to accomplish, and he was a good man. And Mitch was my appointee that I put on the MAPC Planning Commission, and he did an outstanding job, and we miss him, and just a quality individual that deserves to have some recognition, and he'll get that. So that approval did happen. We're going to rename that. There will be a ceremony later this summer, but there's another area that we're going to include in that renaming.
Very nice. And you just broke the news right here on the Call the Mayor show.
Because the callers demanded it.
Why not? Absolutely. 316. If you've got a question to ask, maybe you can break some more news here as well. 491-5787. Tom, you have a question. You are on Call the Mayor. What is your question?
Yeah, I'm calling about the southeast part of town, how deplorable the streets are.
Right.
And it's just terrible.
Right.
And another thing, they don't take care of these trees properly, and they're huge around here, and they're breaking off and falling all over the place.
Before you leave the phone call, have you talked to our Public Works folks that we have a department that will come out and clear trees, and they do a really good job. I saw on social media just yesterday where a tree had fell on someone's carport, and they called the city, and they were out there the same day and got it cleared out.
Well, they're not too bad down there. It's Linwood.
Okay.
And they're pretty good. That's where they're at, and they take care of it pretty good. But there's trees that need to be replaced. It's the old part of town down here, I know, but there's giant trees.
Well,
they're just ridiculous, and these streets are just deplorable.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, and you can get on the city website and look at the roads that will be under construction very soon, many of them in neighborhoods. But in southeast Wichita specifically, we just rebuilt Pawnee Street from Hydraulic to Grove and fixed some stormwater issues that were in that area also, and that's a gorgeous street that needed rebuilt, and the community is really enjoying that. We have more projects planned for some of those neighborhoods, and we know that we've got to do that. The challenge is how many streets can we have tore up at the same time as we're fixing them, but we want to do more in the interior of neighborhoods too. And so I would encourage you, if you see issues on your street with potholes or anything like that, get a hold of City Hall. They will get it to the right department, or we have an app that's you can download on your phone and have a picture taken of that pothole through the app, and it goes right into the system, and they oftentimes will get out there the same day and fix it, and we encourage that. But we do need to continue to fix we're putting more money in streets than we ever have in the history of Wichita, but there's a lot of catch up we have to do and more work that we want to get done.
Now, I did mention Seneca and McLean. It is opened up again. It is open for Riverfest. They were replacing some valves there on the main lines that come out of the water treatment plant.
Right.
And those are like 65-year-old valves.
Right, right.
So, and I noticed that they were flushing the line so that it would be clean after that. And they were also getting the air out of the line. But Ronnie, you have now a question about water as well. Ronnie, you are on Call the Mayor Wichita. What is your question?
Yeah, I live down south here about probably 6-8 months ago. I started noticing my water. It looked dirty and everything. So I called the city and they said to talk to the lab department.
Right.
And he was telling me, he said, well, let it run and it might clear up. Okay, it ain't cleared up yet, and it's just gradually getting worse. And I've seen them out here surveying and everything like that, and they're saying they're going to put new pipelines in. But this is going on 8 months now, and I mean, it's hard to drink dirty water like that. I'm drinking bottled water now, and I can't even afford it.
Have we been down to test it? Have we actually took samples?
Oh, they come out here every 2-3 days and open the fire hydrants.
Right.
And they're standing out there testing it.
Okay. But have we tested your house?
No. Even
So-
my neighbors have got it. I
Yeah.
talked to the neighbors around here.
So we'll come out and actually test the water at your house. And I would encourage you to call them and have that testing done at your house. And we've been doing some of that in different neighborhoods, some of the older neighborhoods. I know that Westlink neighborhood's an old neighborhood that last year we replaced all of the water lines in that neighborhood. That makes a big difference. And we're continually replacing that underground infrastructure that has been under the city of Wichita in many cases for 60+ years. And so it does make a difference. We know we're going to build a new water treatment facility, but part of that work on McLean was in preparation for the new water treatment facility because it will go through the old distribution lines, and we want to make sure that they can hold the water pressure and work effectively, and we won't have any breaks or any issues with that. And so I would encourage you to get your water tested, and the city will come out and do that. And if you talk to your council member, he may be able to figure out through our own Public Works Department when it's scheduled to see those neighborhood lines to be replaced.
316-491-5787. You can also reach out to us through Facebook if you're watching the show live here. We would appreciate your calls. You can ask anything you'd like. Hey, listen, Mayor, about the new city water facility that it's going in.
Right.
Are we going to get federal funding here? Where do we
So
stand on that? Are we going to get those monies?
So we're working through that right now. The application isn't due, for the grant process until October, and so we won't know until the end of the year. But it looks pretty promising, and we have a good relationship with Washington D.C., and that's a big part of it. And we've been going to D.C. working on these opportunities, and so we are a finalist on that grant, and we're working through the grant process. But it looks pretty promising, but we won't have a definitive answer until late this year.
Okay, and again, this is an aggressive facility, price point
absolutely.
wise.
It's about a $550 million facility, and it's a design build, and we have a committee now that's meeting almost weekly and getting updates on the design build process, and my understanding is we're through close to 30% of the design of that system, and I've been told that we've already through that process saved about $25 million.
And the savings would come from where exactly on a design build phase like this?
So the savings come from innovative designs as we work through these issues. In one instance, we were able to take an old water line and reline it with a new lining instead of building a new water line that will feed the transmission lines all the way to the core of the city. And they figured that with some new techniques and this new lining, they can save $12 million right there alone.
Okay, well, we have another caller. Mark, you have a question about one of our city parks. You're on Call the Mayor. Mark, what is your question?
Yes, I was calling about an Esker Park. I years ago got involved in a homeless program and trying to adapt that, and I know in recent months it's gone under construction, and it just seems to the casual observer that we've kind of sold that property out to the commercial part of it with the new construction there with businesses going in, and we're tending to send the homeless to a different area. Can you tell me what are we doing to address the program? Because obviously there is a concern in our area, much like most cities, about how do you service the.
Absolutely.
But I feel like we sold out the parks to the almighty dollar, and I realize because of the proximity of the interest.
Okay, love to address that. First, everyone needs to know that that park actually infringed on private property, and it was sold years ago and never transferred into private property, but the park still existed. And now when a viable developer wants to develop that area, he wants to develop all of the property that they own, which included nearly 15 feet of parkland. So the park had to be reconfigured. The park had to be reconfigured because it was sold long before our time, years ago, by a whole different mayor and council. And so the park had to be reconfigured. I would also argue that if it's a park is not the safe haven, if that's not the proper way to fix the homeless issues in this city. We've got to address that through a variety of programs. We do a lot of housing first. We just gave $360,000 to a couple of organizations that's going to build pretty economical housing for people that need to get off the street. And there's some other programs that we have to take care of too. We have a new committee that's made up of, that the police chief Gordon Ramsay and the sheriff Easter put together, and it's made up of about 40 different organizations that provide a variety of services to the homeless. And they're trying to put together a whole network of how to address the needs of the homeless population that include some physical issues, obviously mental issues, and we're fighting for some grant monies. I know the state initially put $1.9 million in funding for mental health, which we were hoping to get a big piece of that to help address some of these homeless issues that we have, because they're a group that needs a hand up and they need our help, and we need to address that. But the park was built out over that. So the park now is setting in what is city-owned property, and the development is on their own land, and the development's not infringing on park land. They're only built on their land.
And I know the homeless outreach team still continues to be so active in that area.
No question.
And I know you've been very involved with trying to find solutions for the homeless population, separating out just straight homeless from people with mental health issues. I know the sheriff and the police chief are very hard at work now trying to find some solutions for mental health issues, because we've had 2 major shootings, officer-involved shootings, where officers were involved, both sheriffs, deputies, and police. When it comes to finding some of these monies, what could the state do to offer some money? Where would that money go?
So we have before we address the money issue, we have a new pilot program that we're going to start here in about the next month or so, where we are going to respond to those that we know have some issues, mental issues. Instead of just responding with a fire truck and helping them temporarily, we're going to respond with a medical personnel. We're going to respond. It's a 3-person team. So we have a medical person, we have someone from social services that has a background dealing with mental illness, and then there will be a person like a physician's assistant that's going to be on that team. And so they're going to take those 911 calls that we know are more related to mental illness and see if they can't do more to provide help on that initial call, instead of just the temporary help they typically would get when we respond with an ambulance, a fire truck, police officer.
So in this pilot project, we would actually have somebody kind of trained in mental health to go out there and deal with that person that makes the phone call. They could go talk to that person.
Absolutely. So they will be directed to that call. This 3-person team is going to try and address some of those issues in our community. Instead of responding to them with a big fire truck, we We've seen it work in other cities. Colorado Springs, a city that's been utilizing this program for about 3 years now. They've been very successful, and what they've also found is not only do they address the needs of those that have some issues, some mental issues, but it doesn't tie up our assets for those that need to fight fires. And so we get the right people there responding when they need to respond, and hopefully we can address the issue and get them help.
Well, I do know that we've got some call lines open right now. Call the mayor, 316-491-5787. We did get a one phone call. This person wanted to remain anonymous. I assume maybe somebody who has been through the system or been a felon themselves. But question is from the anonymous caller, do we have any programs to help felons find work? I've talked to some people out who have now been recently out of myself, the corrections facility, and I talked to one gentleman, and I put him on the air actually on TV, and he was willing to talk to us, and he said, look, Craig, I'm having trouble finding work. I did my time. I know I did a crime and it was a horrible thing. I did my time and I get it. But now he said I need work. So I don't know that this is the same guy I put on TV, but do we have any programs out there from Wichita?
So two things that I will tell you, and part of it's been driven by our folks over on 37th Street. Coke has been doing quite a bit of work and trying to make some real changes in the criminal justice system so that people do have a second chance. And so there's two programs. One is called Ban the Box, where people don't have to check the box if they've had something on their record. So that doesn't stop them from getting hired in a job. And two, Workforce Alliance, that sets at 21st and Amadon, specifically has some programs where they can help people that have been released to get some training, some job skills, and some potential job placements. So I would encourage anyone that is out there that is looking for that second chance, go talk to Workforce Alliance and see if you can't get access to some of those programs that will give you some job skills and opportunities to be a productive citizen again. And I know our friends at Coke are working hard to change the criminal justice system, and they want to see people be productive again. And you're always going to have a few setbacks here and there, but we shouldn't give up on everyone because there's one or two setbacks.
Well, and talking to the warden, or talking to at El Dorado Correctional, or talking to the Secretary of Corrections for Kansas, we've just hired a new one, but a former secretary will tell you that recidivism is not bad in Kansas compared to other states. We're fairly low compared to other states, but still we've got roughly a third that are, kind of repeat offenders. They come back. And talking to some of those guys, Mayor, I have asked them the question. I said, why are you back? Well, the main reason for them is like, I couldn't find work, or idle hands. I just was bored.
And that's the problem. If they can't find work, they're going to fall back on what they do know. And so we know that if we can find them productive work, that we can create a situation where they can be productive again and be good members of our society. And so we encourage that. And right now we're looking for bodies. We have jobs open. Textron announced a month ago they need 1,000 people. Spirit's hiring like 2,500 people in the last 2 years.
Very busy hiring.
But we have an entire supply chain that props all of these industries up. That I toured B&B B&B Aviation. And they're doubling in size. They're getting ready to put on a 100,000 square foot addition, and they need to hire 50 people this year. And they're just one small example. I can name you 50 other companies in Wichita that are small companies that need trained and skilled labor. So that's why I say go to Workforce Alliance and see if you can't get involved in some of these programs, get some job skills, and help get placement in some of these places that are needing people that want to work.
Well, I've toured Workforce Alliance. There's a lot of good people there, and they're not afraid to talk to anybody. So
no, Keith Lawing is the director there, and he does a really good job.
Okay, 316-491-5787. That's our number. Larry, you are on Call the Mayor. What is your question for the mayor, Larry?
Well, it's the streets that are unpaved from MacArthur to 47th Street and from Hydraulic to Broadway. It's real dusty down here. They're unpaved. They don't keep them graded. The the water stands in the ditches where it causes the bugs and stuff together. And, I know we aren't Comatera, but we pay the same taxes that Comatera does. And I'd like to see something done about these here streets and ditches that are full of water. And I understand, that they can't take and do everything at one time, but I've lived here 36 years, and I've put up with it. And I have complained about it, and nobody gives a darn about us down here in the south end of Wichita.
Well, I would tell you that we do have a program that can get paved streets in your neighborhood, and it's by petition, and you have to go around and get at least 50% of your neighbors to sign it. And if 50% of your neighbors are willing to say, I'll sign a petition, I want my streets paved, they will come out and pave your street. It's simple as that. Now then, we put that on special assessment taxes, and that's how we've built all of our neighborhood streets, our special assessments. And so if you can convince your neighbors that they need paved streets, that's how streets get paved that are dirt streets today, through special assessment, and it's through at least 51% of your block needs to agree that, yes, we want our street paved, and then they will assess it and figure out what the cost is, and then put it on 15 or 20 year specials that you pay obviously a little bit every month that will pave your street. And so you can get it done. If you have any questions on that program, you can call City Hall and talk to our Public Works. They'll give you the paperwork that you need to walk around door to door on your block, and we're happy to get those streets paved if the entire block would like to see them paved. Okay. So we really do care about every part of the city, and in some cases it's the community that has to decide. One person can't say, I want this block paved. They need at least 51% of the people that live on that block to say, yes, let's pave them, and then we'll put them on specials.
Well, I know 47th and Hydraulic down south, there is a lot going on and a lot more that's going to be happening. There's some new things popping up down there.
Well, the nice thing is, when we talk about South Wichita recently, we saved Starlight Drive-In.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a great asset for the community, and glad that we were able to save it. And the people down in South Wichita, especially because it's so close to them, they use it a lot. And it's a great community asset and a quality of life feature.
316-491-5787, that is the number. We have another caller. Donna, you have a question, I believe, about cemeteries. Donna, what is your question?
I would like to know who is responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance at the cemeteries, and who to call when there is a problem, because there are Jamesburg over on Tyler is not, I don't believe, kept up like it should be.
Yeah, and that's a great question that I'm not sure I have the answer to, because most of the cemeteries are privately owned. And so usually there's a phone number somewhere on that cemetery that you can call. But for the most part, the city does not own many of those cemeteries. I live right by that Jamesburg cemetery that she's talking about. I live a half a mile from that, and I haven't walked the cemetery. I know that when it's wet, it makes it a little difficult. Yes. But I've always found that to be a pretty nice little cemetery that sits over there at 17th and Tyler Road.
Who's the city council person for that one? Do you know? I don't know.
So Brian Fry.
Brian Fry. Okay.
So if you talk to Brian Fry, he might be able to direct you to the right folks, but or we can find out who's responsible for the upkeep on that. I was just at Rest Haven over Memorial. They have always a fantastic Memorial Day event that honors those that have sacrificed everything. And in that case, Rest Haven is responsible for keeping up that cemetery. I went with my mother to Whitechapel Cemetery this weekend, and it's one that's not kept up as nice, but again, it's the ownership of Whitechapel that's responsible for keeping up that cemetery.
We do have another question, caller. We'll get to you in a moment, but for now, 316-491-5787. That's 491-5787. Give us a call, Facebook. We do have a question here. Says, I was wondering if the police department is working on a new plan for dealing with people running red lights, speeding excessively, etc. We've had a lot of wrecks recently. Okay, running red lights. I do know that officers are out. I do know that they're monitoring this, but what's the best advice here for somebody?
So we have put in place a traffic unit that their sole responsibility is to monitor speeding and a variety of different traffic infractions. That's the motorcycle unit. We use motorcycles because, quite honestly, they're easier to hide in areas where they can catch people that are not obeying our traffic laws. And so we specifically put that unit in to combat some of that. In addition to that, I would tell you, we have 60 more police officers, commissioned officers today than we had 3 years ago. 60 more officers, so we're continuing to put more investment in public safety. And then recently we started a new program that will move some of our commissioned officers into some different areas. We have a new traffic unit. That
yes.
all they do is respond to traffic accidents, and they will recreate the traffic scene and help people with the proper paperwork, but that's their sole responsibility.
That is
so
new.
That's brand new. We just started that. So they just went through training, and they're not commissioned officers, but they will respond to just traffic accidents. So we have the motorcycle unit that is just traffic enforcement only. We have the new department that just responds to traffic accidents. And on top of that, we have 60 additional officers today than we had 3 years ago. And so we will continue. Be nice if people would show a little personal responsibility, but we know that people don't always do that.
I've never asked the chief of police this question, and if you don't know, that's fine, but I will go ahead and ask. If I have a problem in my neighborhood and it's just ongoing and recurring and people are running red lights or a stop sign, can I get that traffic unit out to where I live, or at least
absolutely?
ask,
So we do a couple of things. If you call, and the chief does a great job of trying to combat some of those situations, especially in neighborhood streets. So we have hidden boxes that we can put that will monitor all of the traffic that happens in different parts of town. If you call, we'll bring out one of these monitoring devices, and it'll record the speed of every car that's going down that street. And so we'll do that sometimes at a week, sometimes 2 weeks at a time. And then we can figure out if we need to implement other measures to stop that. In one case, we went out with some monitoring devices and found out that there were just 2 cars over a 2-week period that were above the speed limit. And so sometimes people say there's constant speeding, and
maybe there is, maybe there isn't.
Right, and that helps us,
Okay.
put our resources where our resources need to be to take care of those issues.
I think I just
But
found a
the
new
police-
story that I'm going to go do. I like this.
So
idea.
yeah, so
But
the
it
police
actually-
definitely like to hear from the community if there's problems in their neighborhood,
Sure.
and we'll respond with a wide variety of different methods to help combat that.
Okay, 316-491-5787. I've got another question here from Facebook, but before that, Steve, you have a question about, I don't know if it's about floodwater, but I heard the words water and concern. Steve, you're on the show. What's your question?
What is the city going to do to address the problem of stormwater drainage around Harry and East Harry and Clifton Street, and then farther west on Harry Street between Broadway and the river?
So I can tell you, and I'm not familiar with those two areas specifically, but just like I mentioned earlier, when we rebuilt Pawnee Street, much of the work that we had to do was to address the stormwater issues, and we do that all over the city whenever we're fixing roads. We first go in and do all of the underground infrastructure that will address stormwater, and we are continuing to do that. But on top of that, we've got to do more with dry detention, and we talked about potentially what we're doing with Clapp. If we rebuild Clapp Park into something different, one of the things we can do at Clapp Park that sets in that general area is build some large ponds that will hold stormwater.
Now, could that be on the south end of that park now?
Right,
where,
right.
where
Well, it'll
it would
run all the
naturally
way
drain?
through that park.
Okay, it'll
where
go
there's,
through naturally.
Where there's a kind of a natural floodway today, and we carve that out so it can hold detention. We just finished a big detention project in part of the city where we dug out a giant lake basically and made it dry. and then we keep it dry for rain events. And
Was
then
that Brian Fry's district?
That was Brian Fry's district.
That's out,
the
I'm trying to
new
think of the
urban-
location.
That's the new Proct Wetland.
Proct
Park.
Wetland, thank you.
That is awesome destination park, but part of that park, we included some stormwater detention so we can fix some of the flooding that's going on. We may be able to do some of that in South Wichita when we address some of the issues of CLAP. We've got to build places that can hold water. Now we're having record rains, and if you look at all of the communities around us, every community around us has had major flooding, way more than Wichita, and part of that's because, one, the big ditches saved us.
Sure.
Two, we've done at least a dozen stormwater projects over the last 5 or 6 years that mostly in isolated neighborhoods that are starting to fix some of these stormwater issues. But I'm pretty proud of what our staff has done to start addressing stormwater. Now, when you have record rainfalls, it's hard to do anything for the temporary situation, but we're getting better at addressing stormwater every year.
Okay, Robin, you have a question or a comment for the mayor. You're on the show. Robin, what would you like to say? Robin is gone.
We lost
Sorry.
Robin.
Call back, Robin. Call back if you get a chance. Sorry, we lost you there. We do have a Facebook question from Bob. Could you please comment on the recent U.S. Census Bureau population estimates for the city of Wichita and the Wichita metro stat area for the year ending July 1, 2018? It's very specific, but the latest on the census for Wichita.
So the census estimates are different than the census, and so I haven't seen the census estimate data specifically. I know the region, Wichita is becoming a destination for healthcare.
Yes.
And so you're starting to see many people in rural Kansas migrate to big cities, and we're no different. I know that our population in Wichita has grown from 2,000 by nearly 40,000 people. And so we will continue to see that growth. And right now we need more people. We need people to fill these jobs that are in Wichita. Our unemployment's at a historic low right now.
Unemployment's very low, but we need workers and trained workers. And I know we have the tools in place, WSU
Right.
Tech and some of those things. We got calls piling up, so I do want to get to some of those. 316-491-5787. Go ahead and call. We'll get to your question. But Joe, you have a question for the mayor right now. What is your question about downtown?
Yes, sir. What's the future of Century 2?
So we don't know the future of Century 2, and we want the community to weigh in on that. So there is several different organizations that have come together to solicit some planning that's going to be done on the East Bank to look at what our needs are in terms of convention space, in terms of performing arts space. What should we do with the old library? We have some suggestions of what could go in that building. I personally think that we can repurpose Century 2 if we take conventions and other things out of it. I think it's an area that deserves our attention, that we can figure out what the perfect repurpose is, and in some cases maybe it's just gathering space and community events, and so we need the community to respond, and that's something that we're going through right now. So it's about a 8 or 9 month process.
What's the deadline if I want to get involved and I want to have a say in
So
this?
they're going
What do
to
I do?
start having community meetings here very soon. The partnership's kind of coordinating some of that, and they're going to put together some opportunities for the community to weigh in, but they shared with me just this last week, it's about an 8 month process. So we really won't have the answers for next February,
it'll be
potentially?
February at least, sure.
So February or March of next year before we have a decision on what we need to do with that space.
Such an iconic building. I know people are
I
interested
love
in
it.
Yeah.
I think it's great for the community, and I think there's opportunities to repurpose it potentially, but we won't know until we hear from the community, and the community needs to weigh in. So if you have ideas, or if you have input, if you have thoughts on what you would like to see, attend these meetings. Let us know what your thoughts are. Weigh in, because the community ultimately is going to get to decide, and they should.
Good to hear. I understand that we have another caller, Jason. I think this is the first. I think it's a drug question. Jason, you're on the show. What is your question for the mayor? We lost Jason.
We lost Jason.
Jason, I was told, had a question about drugs in his neighborhood. What would he do about that? I assume call the police, first of all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Detective
We wanna-
units could eventually get to that.
So we
Whether
do
you're
get
north,
involved.
south, east, or west
Right.
patrol, those specifically could help you out there.
So we do get involved in those cases, and some situations, we send folks out to monitor.
Okay. Okay. Well, 316-491-5787 is the number to call. Hang with us if you're calling. This is another Facebook question from Lindsay. When the city wants to expand our entertainment options but sells the old Gander Mountain, sold to a commercial buyer with a question mark there, I know there have been a lot of questions, and I'd ask some of those questions of you too, Mayor. Gander
Sure.
Mountain, we had high hopes for that. We were hoping for
Right.
a grand entertainment district in there, and I guess kind of a deflation of a balloon of, office space. But your take on this is maybe office space is not a bad thing. It is going to be repurposed. And would we eventually have something else in there for entertainment?
So let me
options?
correct one thing. Once,
Yes.
the city didn't sell it.
Oh, okay.
So Gander Mountain was privately owned.
Yes.
So
The building
Jack DeBoer owned Gander Mountain space.
True.
And so he controlled that.
City owns the land.
The land underneath
pad.
it, but we didn't own Gander Mountain.
So that was up to Jack DeBoer and his
So that's up to Jack
group.
DeBoer to try and fill that. Now, we probably could have denied it, but did we want the building to sit empty? The reality is, we think that if we can get, potentially 900 people down there working, that they're going to bring the energy that we need and obviously the income that we need. Those are good paying jobs, averaging $51,000 a year.
50 plus, yeah.
And so you put those elements together in an area and they will feed the retail and the entertainment options, and we're going to probably see many of those entertainment options now happen around the new ballpark. And so it just simply moves across the river, and you're going to see some pretty exciting entertainment options and a pretty lively area, and Delano's really growing into a bustling area. And so to move that entertainment across the other side of the river is not such a bad deal either, but we need good paying jobs in Wichita, and that helps diversify our economy, so it's not just aviation jobs.
And that keeps a major employment player in town as well.
In town, absolutely.
One of the things that we've talked about is the queue line and transportation. Robin, you are on the show. You have a question about transportation. Go ahead.
Yes, hello?
Hi.
Hi, Robin.
For the queue line, I was wondering if the queue line could swing up to the downtown library off of Douglas. And then the other question I had was, I work at Heritage Plaza Building at St. Francis, and sometimes we have patients that need transportation, and as far as I know, the bus doesn't come to St. Francis anymore.
Yeah, I will tell you that the queue line was put in place so that we could have basically rapid transportation on a 5-mile stretch of Douglas. Now, I know not everyone's capable of walking a block or 2 blocks off of Douglas, but we've found that it's been a great form of transportation. In fact, I share the story all the time that before we expanded the route of the queue line and the frequency of the buses, and we run those until 11 p.m. at night, Fridays and Saturdays until 1 a.m., and a bus comes by about every 7 minutes, we've seen the queue line go from 4,000 riders a year to over 120,000 riders a year.
And that's kind of a startling number. Where do we stand on spending some more money and expanding the queue? Is that in the pipeline?
So the queue line right now we were able to expand utilizing some private investment, and businesses along that Douglas Corridor Avenue said, look, we'll spend our dollars to get people traveling along this corridor, and they've been propping it up and been very happy. When you have 120,000 people running up and down in front of your business, it can provide other opportunities. But I can tell you our new transit director's doing some very innovative things. So we're trying to get away from that old hub and spoke system and put in more of a grid system. And so we're starting to get there where we will have buses running up and down Central, potentially buses running up and down 21st Street.
West Wichita.
So all the way to east to west and north to south. And so we're looking at some of those options, and he's looking at some innovative ways to get other transportation vehicles involved,
okay.
like Uber.
Now, is this Mike
Tan? Mike Tan.
I talked to him at one point. He wanted to try scooters.
So he's looking at
where do we stand on scooters?
Very innovative ways for people to get around,
Could be
and so
fun.
they're looking at maybe can people utilize scooters to carry them that extra block or two from the Q line and other transportation lines that can get them to their final destination. And so they're looking at a lot of options that could include almost personal-like vehicles or smaller buses, certainly.
Okay, 316-491-5787 is the number. Call and ask anything you want. Of course, if you're watching now and you're on Facebook, go ahead and reach out. Don't be afraid. We will answer almost any. Oh, no, we won't.
Yeah, we'll at least try or
We're not
direct
going to talk
you.
about football and basketball. Or we can talk baseball for sure.
We have a Wichita State kid playing basketball
Okay,
tonight
I wanted to bring
on
that
the
up.
national
I'm glad you
stage.
did. That is fun. That is absolutely fun.
That's good for us. I mean, it gives us some. You know, I was watching the game the other night, and they must have mentioned Wichita and Wichita State a dozen times.
That never gets old.
That never gets old, and
never.
that's free publicity.
All right, where do we stand on the baseball? How are we with money? Are we on schedule? Are we going to be spending more money on this?
Great
less
question.
money on this?
Great question.
Where are we here?
So that's another design build process.
Yes.
So we are now at 70% of the design. They are working evenings and weekends over there through all of these different rain events because they have steel coming here in about a week, and they are ready. I saw them pouring concrete almost in the rain the other night.
Can they do that?
If it's not raining too hard,
okay,
and depending on the place that they're pouring, they can do that. They've been outstanding at getting ahead of this bad weather, and they're ready to put steel in the air. And
so we'll see some beams coming up here.
You're going to see beams coming out of the ground and the stadium taking shape. And the nice thing is this design build process is at 70% now. We are $1 million under budget.
Okay, that
$1
was my next
million
question.
under budget.
Let me ask you, let's assume that we're not going over budget. Okay, you're $1 million under. Let's assume that we're going to be under budget right now. And if you have questions about this too, you can call 491-5787. Of course, the 316 is the area code. Facebook also. But look, if we do come in under budget, where does that surplus go? Are we going to see that kind of be swept into the general fund? I know there'll be some questions about whether or not that will go to general fund, or will we break it up between all of the different districts, or just the two council people who have their district in that area?
No,
where
so
does that money
potentially
go?
if we have a surplus, it can go back into some other capital programs, and then again we'll decide what the best and highest use is for that. But we're still addressing some parking concerns, and we need to do that. We're trying to assemble all of the space. We're working on an opportunity to put in a parking structure, a parking garage of some sort over there, and some additional surface parking. And so there's...
Could we utilize private parking? I know that there's a new building going in not far from there across the river. Help me out here. It's not a bank building, or
Fidelity?
Fidelity. It is a financial system going in place. They're going to be coming in soon.
So they're under construction now. You see cranes in the air over there right now. They're building a $51 million complex over there, adding on to Fidelity Bank, and it's going to be a 4-story parking structure with the first floor being retail space, and then a 10-story office complex. But at this point in time, they're looking at all of that parking to be private parking, but it could free up some other public parking in the area.
The people park. Well, I'm glad they're going to be a big part of the community and stay here and
taking care of their parking
too.
needs that may free up some of the other public parking areas.
All right, we mentioned baseball. Go ahead and call if you got a question. 316-491-5787. Cindy, you've got a question. You're on the line. Cindy, what's your question for the mayor?
My question is the property on the south side of Douglas part of the baseball deal between Sycamore and McLean?
So
south of Douglas. Between Sycamore, Cindy, are you still there? Help me out with Sycamore to McLean. What's in there now? Is that residential?
It's businesses.
No, those businesses stay.
Oh, okay.
Most of them are empty.
Yeah. Well, I know there's one building that's brand new that's in there. The Hayes Company built a gorgeous new building that's in there. The church property's being bought up by a different developer, and he has plans for that area to be redeveloped into retail space and some office complexes, and they'll take over. And I don't know how much of that footprint the church owns. They may own a couple of those empty buildings, and they're working through their development phase of architecturally designing all of that. But
will the church still have a footprint there?
So the church is planning on having a smaller footprint there.
Okay. Okay, but that would be up to a different developer
Right,
still.
that's not the city's development or land to make those decisions.
Well, look, we're under budget for the baseball facility. I guess that goes into Ricky's question. Ricky, you are on the air with Call the Mayor. What is your question, Ricky?
Well, my question is, when you say you have excess revenue or surplus,
right?
Why don't you save that for the year when you don't have, and you're in the hole like common people do?
Yeah.
And you'll have money rattled back instead of having to cut stuff and raise taxes.
Yeah, we did that last year. We put the $2.5 million surplus into a savings, basically.
Now, when you say savings, is that a municipal, a bond, or how does that work?
So we do investments, and that's part of how we generate additional revenue. But we put the entire surplus last year into savings. Okay. So that we're doing exactly what he just suggested, so that we do have it for a time when there may not be budget surpluses. And so we now have, as I mentioned earlier, we have 15% of our budget in a savings account, basically. So we have $35 million into a surplus savings account. So the entire $2.5 million surplus last year went into savings.
Saving for a rainy day.
So saving for a rainy day. We know a little bit about rainy days right now. We're getting to be an expert on that. And so we could do the same thing with the $1 million surplus this year.
Could go there.
But we also know that we have more streets that need to be fixed and more opportunities that we need to address. We will continue to hire more police officers and all that. You know, we've hired, as I mentioned, 60 additional officers. That's $6 million hit to our budget.
Yes.
We did without raising taxes.
Well,
that was all from growth.
I'll give you that one. There's no complaints there. Walter, you have a question. 316, by the way, 491-5787. That is our number here for Call the Mayor. Walter, you have a question. You are on the show. What is your question?
Yes, I was wondering if they were going to develop the area around the library into something more than what's there, because of course it's empty space, but much of the stuff that's being thought of now is putting recreational ideas to work, and I was wondering if they were going to do something like a branch of the art museum, or something besides the big glob of concrete they have in the ground directly east of it.
So that's part of what I talked about, that we're going through about an 8-month planning period where we're going to reach out to the community and we want their input. And they've hired Populous that's going to, and Populous was hired by multiple groups that have come together and banded together to put in their private dollars to say, we want to figure out what should be done, and let's do it right, and let's address the community's concerns. And so those are all things that will be decided through this new East Bank planning process that will ask for the community's input. So we will have a better answer for you if you continue to look for opportunities to weigh in as they reach out to the community in a wide variety of needs. They're planning on surveys and some public meetings and some other opportunities for the community to share their thoughts on that, and then we'll make those decisions.
So
let's plan it out first.
But I will get a chance to talk to Populous or give them my opinions.
Absolutely, and so the entire community will have that opportunity. So if you want to share what you think would be in the best interest of the community, we want to hear from you.
Community engagement is so important. We're glad you're on the show right now. Call the mayor, 491-5787. We've still got time for maybe 1 or 2 more quick calls. Community engagement is not easy to come by because people tend to think, oh, my neighbor's going to call, or my brother's going to call, or that's not always the case. We need people to get engaged and show. Look, one of the things that I've heard.
Before we take too many questions,
yes,
I do want to mention what we're getting ready to go through with our All-American City.
I'd asked you about this earlier. When was the last time, trivia time, when was the last time Wichita was an All-American City? I would have guessed 6 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
It's been 10 years.
So it's been 10 years since we were named an All-American City, and so we have now been named a finalist. Okay. So we're one of 20 cities in the United States, and these are cities of every size. So out of thousands and thousands of cities, we're one of 20 that's been named a finalist. Now we go make our case in front of a panel in Denver, Colorado on June the 23rd. And we share with them all of the cool things that are happening in our city, and then they will make a decision on which city is named All-American City. And so it's a status symbol, certainly. It will help us recruit more people to our city to fill some of these jobs that we have, and it's something we can take a lot of pride in.
I know I've asked you this before, but we are probably going to have to go outside of Wichita to find some skilled laborers to fill all these jobs.
No question. We're busy recruiting people right now to come in and fill these jobs. Our unemployment rate is just above 3% right now, and
that beats the national average.
So we're doing really, really well in terms of providing jobs. Now we have to fill those jobs with qualified people.
I do have another question about the ballpark before we go. Faye has a question. She says, elevators. Will there be elevators in the new baseball stadium? Now this is an interesting question, Mayor, because I know the stadium is being kind of built into a bowl for the players, but what about me if I'm using a walker or,
So
elevators?
Neat elements that are being designed into this multi-purpose entertainment venue, because it's not just baseball games. So we now have a tunnel that's already built. It's set in there for people that physically can't walk steps, that they can walk through the tunnel right down to the field, and there are seats right at the edge of the field that they can participate in. There's a concourse area, and yes, there's elevators in the new ballpark.
Okay, that's
so we
great.
have elevators, we have handicap parking, we have a tunnel that will take you to unique seats so you can get the same advantage point of those that can walk down steps right to the edge of the
so
field.
For the design of this, unique seats, what does that mean? Is it going to have netting over it? Will I be behind home plate? What is that?
It'll be behind netting, but it'll give you a vantage point that typically you only see people that are physically able of walking steps to be able to sit in some of these seats. If you can't walk steps, we're providing a way for you to get down to the field level if you choose, through a very simple ramp that'll take you down, or we have an elevator that will take you up to the upper levels.
So grandma could literally walk right up to one of those seats.
Walk right up to one of those seats, or stay on the concourse level. If you have a wheelchair, they'll roll you right into some wheelchair accessible seating, or you can take the elevator up to the upper level.
The upper level sounds like fun too. I did want to ask you this. When it comes to the All-American City, and I know that is a point of pride and also a point of prestige for cities when they get it. We are a finalist with about less than a minute now that we've got remaining. How do you make that pitch to explain what Wichita has going on in like 3 points? What do you tell them why Wichita for this All-America status?
So we have very specific programs that we have targeted to make our presentation with, and we're going through rehearsals right now, and so different council members are involved and will be involved in the presentation in front of the panel, and so it's exciting, and we think we can make a great case of why we should be named an All-American City, and we feel pretty good about our chances.
Can we beat out some of our neighbors? Is that
absolutely?
Do they list the finalists, the 20, or do they?
So the 20 finalists are named if you get on to the All-American City website. I couldn't tell you what the 20 cities are, but
gonna go look at that myself.
So if you pull up the All-American City website, you can see the 20 cities that are named finalists. We compete with all 20 cities. There's not a size differential, and so it's should be fun.
We'll bring you that next time. So no, I appreciate it. Mayor, again, thank you for being here.
Craig, thank you.
As always, we appreciate your calls. Join us again next time for Call the Mayor. Thanks for being here. Until next time, have a good one.